Saw dudes, Loki Prime just had his own dedicated build video and endurance testing has been finalized. As already stated in my previous video, Loki is extremely strong and just suffers from a somewhat dated kit. There's no denying that he has a lot of potential and can go the distance, it's just that he can feel a bit bland at times. Regardless, this level cap run with Loki was extremely smooth, and that's with a terrible primary weapon build. It just goes to show that you can't beat the classics. Let's get started. The Loki Prime build is a slight alteration from the helmet setup shown in my previous video. For higher gun damage, I chose to use Worthy Camaraderie, which grants a 75% bonus weak shot critical chance. Hushed Invisibility ensures our guns are silent when we are invisible, which is great for avoiding gunfire in our general location. Archon Continuity increases ability duration and also causes toxin stats effects from abilities to also apply a corrosive proc. Prime Flow increases energy reserves. Archon Stretch and Augur Reach increase range, with Archon Stretch also allowing us to regen 2 energy per second for 5 seconds upon inflicting an electric proc on an enemy with an ability. Narrow-Minded drastically increases ability duration. Precision Intensify grants a 90% bonus ability strength buff for a 4th ability only, which is Roar in this case. Safeguard Switch causes switching with an enemy to grant us a brief period of invulnerability. Switching with an ally will grant them a double duration of invulnerability. Using Switch Teleport, regardless of the unit, will cleanse all stats effects. This augment gives us damn near unlimited survivability and made the run super easy. Damage Decoy is our primer of sorts. Casting Decoy on an enemy will cause others to attack it. Those who hit the decoyed enemy receive 5 random stats effects and have the damage reflected and amplified. My helmet ability for this run was Roar, since I wanted to have a universal Bane multiplier for my primary weapon, Baza Prime. Having Roar on the build also amplified the damage procs from Damage Decoy, making it lethal in level cap. More on that later on. The arcanes remain the same since the dedicated build guide. I'm using Arcane Crepuscular and Impetus. Crepuscular gives us 30% ability strength while invisible, and an additive 3x final crit multiplier. For crit sticks, this is great since it will drastically increase low base damage weapons. Impetus grants 6% ability strength and 3% ability efficiency for each unique stats effect afflicted on enemies from abilities. Damage Decoy caps out the bonus of 78% ability strength and 39% ability efficiency quickly and easily, allowing us to scale Roar's damage multiplier. The Archon Shards that I used have changed slightly. I have 2 Tauforge Crimson Shards for duration and 1 Tauforge Crimson Shard for strength. The duration is super helpful for invisibility and Roar, and the strength helps with Roar as well. The Tauforge Emerald Shard puts us close to full stripping armor with corrosive stacks. Finally, I have a Casting Speed Shard for quality of life. The primary weapon I used this time was Baza Prime to play into the stealth theme for Loki Prime. The mods I used were Spectral Serration, Galvanized Chamber, Primary Acuity, Vital Sense, Hunter Munitions, Malignant Force, Prime Cryo Rounds, Rifle Elementalist, and Vigilante Supplies. This build is not what you should use. I was a dingus and used a multi-shot mod, even though Primary Acuity locks it to 1. I would recommend using Point Strike, Prime Shred, or Vigilante Fervor over Galvanized Chamber. Primary Crux takes up the Arcane slot, granting up to 300% status chance and 60% ammo efficiency. Running out of ammo is now an impossibility with Baza Prime. For the secondary weapon, I ran Tenet Cycron. This gun was my primer and allowed me to tear through armor. I used Barrel Diffusion, Sure Shot, Pistol Pestilence, Accelerated Isotope, Jolt, Frostbite, Augur Seeker, Scorch, and Ruinous Extension. The Arcane was secondary Encumber for even better priming potential and to, hopefully, apply cold procs to slow down Thrax units for easier headshots with Baza Prime. The melee weapon I chose to use once again was Praedos for the extra movement capabilities. The evolutions I used are the standard Drifting Grace, Shockwave Synergy, Evolved Ascension, and Universal Readiness. The mods I used were Sovereign Outcast, Dreamer's Wrath, Prime Breach, Condition Overload, Blood Rush, Weeping Wounds, Galvanized Elementalist, Prime Fury, Organ Shatter, and Galvanized Steel. The Panzer build I used is the standard I have used in all my other showcases. Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond are mandatory, so be sure to use those since they increase crit damage and fire rate respectively. This is super important for Baza Prime. The mod you can switch out here is Tech Assault. This can be swapped for Vicious Bond, Mystic Bond, or Pounce if you like. The Panzer Claw build is the same as my other showcases. I use Balanced Posture to ensure all enemies are primed effectively. Shocking Claws increases status chance and applies electric damage, just in case our Damage Decoy doesn't apply electric procs for us. Bite increases crit chance enough to give us a crit damage bonus via Tenacious Bond. The rest of the mods increase the damage that the Panzer does, and primes them for attacks from our weapons. You won't be surprised to hear it, but Madurai is what I used. Void Strike and Void Fuel allowed me to quickly dispatch the spectral forms of Thrax units. Phoenix Talons increased physical and operator damage and was a nice bonus for Baza Prime. Proud Transfer decreased the lengthy casting animation of Roar. Contamination Wave made headshots against Thrax units much more lethal. The only notable part of Madurai in the context of this run was Sling Strength, which gave a bonus 40% ability strength. This bonus allowed Damage Decoy, Switch Teleport, and Roar to scale much better. Damage Decoy did more damage, Switch Teleport granted a higher movement speed multiplier, and Roar gave us a greater damage buff, which Baza and Praedos double dipped thanks to slash procs. The amp I used was a standard 147 or Certus Brace, Raplac Prism, and Fad Scaffold. This is the amp I always use, and I recommend using it if you want to go to level cap Cascade. I use Magus Cloud, Magus Lockdown, Eternal Eradicate, and Eternal Onslaught as my operator arcanes. Now let's talk about the run. This was a very smooth run, despite my very smooth-brained primary weapon build. I'll break down how the run went by Loki's abilities and how they played a role. His passive was useless, obviously. In realistic gameplay scenarios, Loki's extended wall latch time does not provide any benefit, which is especially true in Void Cascade missions. For this video, I could have no passive at all and still play at the same level. Decoy was amazing and surprised me towards the end of the run when considering the damage decoy augment. Decoy is the best crowd control in Warframe, and you can quote me, in the sense that it isn't hampered by overguard or special enemy health buffers. The heightened threat level of the ability means that all enemies will target it, pretty much forgetting about you or your teammates. If you think about the base ability alone, this can be massively helpful for squishy teammates, and can be more forgiving for players that overextend into enemy groups. When you consider damage decoy, this utility gets even better. We now have a decent damage dealer and can create mass hysteria across the battlefield. Enemies that attack the damage decoy have their damage reflected and amplified, in addition to suffering 5 random status effects. Enemies in level cap deal ridiculous damage, about 10,000 to 1 million per hit depending on the attack. At base, the reflected damage is amplified by 350%, so you can outright kill groups with one ability cast. If you prime enemies with viral procs, corrosive procs, and magnetic procs, you'll nuke a group. However, this strat is not super reliable as most won't go to level cap, let alone level 5000. Invisibility is a straightforward ability. Enemies can't see you, you can see them, so you can win. In today's meta, invisibility is hard to beat, especially when paired with decoy in any measure. Hush invisibility gives us a little bit more leeway. Usually, weapons will alert enemies to your firing location when invisible, unless the gun is rated as silent. Hush invisibility cuts down all gun noise while the ability is active, meaning you will never give away your location. Even though I used Baza Prime, which is integrally suppressed, Tenet Cycron isn't. If I hadn't used this augment, I would have been putting myself in danger every time I wanted to kill a Thrax unit or an Eximus unit. Switch Teleport without its augment is admittedly a pretty bad ability. The only redeeming factor it has is the speed boost it grants upon completion, which isn't bad, but it isn't good either. With the Safeguard Switch augment though, you get to make this ability ridiculously powerful. If you switch with an enemy, you get a status cleanse and a decently long invulnerability period. Switch with an ally and they get a doubled invulnerability duration, and both of you get a status cleanse. Switch Teleport is only 25 energy to cast, and with our current setup we get about 8 seconds of invulnerability, while allies get 16. The status cleanse is perfect and allows us to drop using Rolling Guard. If your teammates need a little bit of TLC, this ability can provide it for them. Radial Disarm isn't on my build because I feel that it's redundant and less worthwhile than other options. As discussed, we have 3 survivability tools: Damage Decoy, Invisibility, and Switch Teleport. Radial Disarm only takes away firearms, but guns are the least of our worries since Eximus units have radial attacks, which are much more lethal. So instead, I used Roar, which is bolstered by Arcane Crepuscular, Impetus, and Precision Intensify. I really love using this ability because it acts like a universal Bane multiplier. Other great abilities would have been Breach Surge or even Mind Control. I mentioned earlier that Damage Decoy was lethal, and with Mind Control I'm pretty sure I could have had a crazy minion one-tapping enemies that I primed. It's a concept I may revisit down the line if you guys show interest. So what do I think? In my opinion, Loki is low-key busted because he low-key isn't talked about that much. Jokes aside, he performs well, he just has a dated kit causing him to feel a bit bland. If he gets a light touch-up to his passive and Radial Disarm, I can see him being the poster boy of Warframe again, just like Excalibur. If you have good guns, willpower like Big Boss, and the desire to play stealthily, Loki Prime is your next frame. I hope this video helped. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for watching and happy farming. Stay safe.
Spent Exilizer has been retired. are spent. Exalizer. Working on backups. Exalizer spent. Told you before, pumps out even more fluid contamination. Spent Exalizer has been retired. Keep those manifestations away from the Exalizer. Working on backups. Ah, the void has manifested something other than a nightmare. Spent Exalizer has been retired.